Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Harika. So in today's video, I am going to talk about user context view. That means, let's say if I am logging in as Harika, I wanted to showcase only certain details for that particular user. So in any organization or in any firm, let's say there's a huge data, and especially if there's a confidential data, then this factor comes into picture. I don't want it to provide all the information that I have for all the users, right? But let's say in a case where if you wanted to restrict the data that's there within the app, then in that case we have to follow this particular strategy in order to give the access to a certain user, limited access only to some part of the data. So how we can actually achieve that? So if you see here, let me quickly show you my whole data first. Let's say I have my complete data over here. So this is my entity. So I have my complete data over here. So this is the complete data. So let's add one more field also to show you clearly. Um, okay. Teacher is, let's say Ross or someone else. Okay. Okay. So if you see here, yeah, perfect. So if you see over here, right? So I have the details, all these details of the students, right? Students, the class number, student ID, and everything. And if you see here, the teacher name, class teacher name is provided over here, and the class number is this. So if you see the class number 1 to 3 is provided in my complete list. But here, if you see only class number 1, and for the class teacher Harika is only mentioned over here, right? So how we can restrict that data? So if you know the functionality of edit grid, we have worked on that. So basically, if you have a edit grid, whatever the data that you have it in your data service, all the data we can view. But in this particular video, I'm going to show you how we can restrict that information only to certain data. Right. So here, if you see, I'm only giving class 1 data for this teacher to view and edit to make all the changes. But rest of the information I'm not giving because this information is a confidential information, right? So similarly, in order to have this, I have one more mapping, which is class teacher entity. In this, if you observe, I'm having class number and teacher name. So which class data has to be provided to which teacher? So in that way, I have embedded this information so that what happens because of this is, let's say in future, right? In future, if, okay, let's go ahead and do the changes. Okay. So let's say this is Harika, right? Let's say this is Monica and this is Harika. Okay. So as per this logic, if the user is logged in as Harika, the class number will be 2, right? So in that case, the student information, let's go to the student information and see here. So we have only this detail. So only this information has to come in. So let's go ahead and see if we are able to do that. Let me refresh the app so we can refresh the data service as well and get the latest information. And now I am going to preview this app. So as per this, even though there is a change in that particular class and the teacher name, so we should be able to get the exact value, right? So now the user that has logged in is Harika. So in that case, the who is the now if you see here the class teacher, like the teacher Harika is for class 2. So in that case, we should be able to get all these details. So let's go ahead and see. Perfect, right? So this is how we wanted to streamline the data, right? So if you observe here, let me put these things in the notepad. So there are basically two entities that I have created. Okay. So one entity talks about all information. Okay. All information of students. So this is a confidential information. So I don't want to spread this information for all the teachers of all the classes, right? So for that purpose, so let's say if there's a class teacher of class 1, then I wanted to give her the details of only her class students. So she can edit it or add it or whatever she can do it, right? But if I give the whole information, then there is a chance that some or other information can be misused or they can actually edit them or some or other thing can happen. And also to maintain the confidentiality, I am streamlining, I am giving access only to the required teacher to that particular class. So how do I know? Okay, so the second entity talks about class and teacher of that particular class. So the reason behind creating the second entity is two things. Okay, so first thing is we can have a clear mapping of which class teacher is for which class. I mean the teacher for which class, right? So first thing is mapping. We can have a clear mapping. And the second thing is, so let's say if there is a change or if the teacher has moved out of the organization, then in that case you don't have to go and edit in everything. That means in all this information you don't have to edit the class teacher name. Let's say there are 100 students, right? So you don't have to go and edit here in all these things by searching everything. You can just come to this place and wherever, so let's say fifth class teacher has been changed from, let's say, Monica to some different person, let's say Chandler. Okay, so in that case you just come over here and just replace or edit Monica with this name. So that's it. So that's how you can actually fetch all the details, right? So this way we can streamline the user data based on the user that has been provided with a login, right? So how I have achieved this and what is the exact thing that I'm going to show you. So the first thing that you should get clarity is with the process and also with the entities that I have created. So first of all, if you see the entities, I told you, right, there are two entities, student details and class teacher. Student details contains all the student information like the student name, class number, student ID, gender, contact number, and the class teacher. Okay, so all this information is available. We can also actually, this is not needed, we can delete this one as well, because if there is any change you have to edit everywhere, so this is actually not necessary. So this is one thing. Okay, so this student details contains all the information of all the students across the different classes, okay, with their gender, with their contact number and everything. And the other entity contains, so let's go for the class teacher entity. This is just a mapping, this is like a referencing. So the first class, for the first class, who is the teacher? So the first class, Monica, second class, Harika, third class, all of this. Like this is basically the mapping that we are doing. So what happens when the user logs in into the app, right? When the user logs in into the app, we are going to check what is the username, right? Who is the current user that has logged in into the app. Based on that particular user who has logged in with that particular name, we are going to fetch the class number, right? So let's say Chandler has logged in with the Chandler user. Then we are going to fetch class number 5. So that means we should only show class number 5 details to the Chandler because he belongs to the class number 5. He's a teacher for class number 5. So he don't need all other information. We are going to show only 5th class information, right? So first let's get that part, okay? So let me put it over here. Okay, so let's say if Harika has logged in, okay, with respect to user that has logged in, we will fetch the class number, correct? So first let's get this one. Okay, let me change this back because class number 1 has more details, so I wanted to show that one. Done. So now let's go back here Okay, for I will create one more app for you. I will create it from the scratch so you don't miss out any data, any information. Okay, so let me first go to the App Studio. Okay, I'm creating one app, user context demo. Okay, so the first thing is, as I told you, entities. First, get your entities. Okay, so we need two entities for this process. So the first entity is not employee, sorry, class teacher. This is a mapping. And the second thing is student details. Okay, just add these both of them. So if you're watching my channel for the first time, if you feel that this content is really useful, then don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So that gives me a lot of motivation to come up with next videos. Yes. So now we have actually imported both of the entities that we need for this process. So first thing that we have to do here is, let's add the control. Okay, so we need to get the class number, right? So what class this is based on the user that has logged in, right? So for that I'm creating a just a label just to see the class number. Okay, and what we have to do here is, so the first and the foremost thing that you have to remember is, whenever you're using entities, okay, whenever you're using entities, if you wanted to fetch the details from them, try to get the details when the main page is loading. Okay, so that you can use them across anywhere. Okay, so for that purpose what I'm doing is I'm creating an app variable for um let's say class list. Okay, this is the class list. Let's consider this as a list source, and I'm taking the class. There is a class teacher entity. Okay, I'm taking the class teacher entity. If you're not getting, I'll re-explain this concept after I show you this module. Don't worry. So I'm taking the class list, but this class list, this is just a variable that I've created. Okay, so what I'm going to do exactly here is, in the main page, when the main page is loading, I'm creating a rule like set value. So in this I am going to set the value for class list variable. Okay, class list variable. And what is the value that I'm going to set here is, I'm going for the query builder and I'm just taking everything that is there in the class list. Okay, so why I have done this is because whenever you're taking an entity, okay, so later going forward I will be fetching, right? So what is my first agenda? I will fetch the class number based on the user that has logged in, correct? So for that purpose, I am going to write a query. I'm going to write a query to fetch the class number. So in order to apply queries, it should be in a certain syntax, because that has to be in a collection, right? So it has to be in a collection, or it has to be an enumerable in order to apply the query. So for that purpose, I've created a variable which is a list source. That's a collection, right? So which is a list source. So on a list source, I can apply or I can write a query, right? By using where and select and all of that. So for that purpose, first I've taken all the values and I've put it into a list source. Okay, that's the first step. What is the next second step is, we have to fetch the class number based on the user that has logged in. That's quite simple. So for that purpose, I am again using set value. Okay, so now the thing is, here we have list source, right? From this list source, I will be fetching the values that I need. But where to write that? For that, again, I need a variable, right? So for that purpose, I am creating one more variable. Okay. So if it's confusing all these screens, then I would suggest you go to the app variables. Okay. Create a variable like class number variable, and then give it as a text, because that's a number, right? So give it as a text or integer or anything. So just provide here the value that we have just created, class number variable, and save it. So now comes the main thing. Now we have already taken the whole data that is there in the class teacher entity, right? We have taken whole data and we have kept it in the class list, because to perform, to do the queries, to apply the queries, that has to be a collection, has to be an enumerable, right? So for that purpose, I am using class list dot data dot as enumerable. So this is basically the query. We have a syntax to fetch the details. So if you don't know, I would highly recommend you to go and watch the link queries playlist from my channel, because that will not only help you with this, but also it will leverage your understanding on writing your own queries in whatever the context it may be. Okay. So I would suggest you, maybe you can directly, I'll just quickly take a minute to show you how you can go to my channel and access that particular playlist. Okay, so as soon as you land on my channel, go to playlist, and there are close to 14 videos or something on link queries. So this is the playlist, okay? 16 videos are there on link queries. You don't have to learn everything. If you learn first few, 3, 4 basic syntaxes, you will become pro at writing the next ones, okay? So try to get some expertise at this area, because it's not only about apps, because now apps has turned into VB expressions. You can write all these queries using these functions and syntaxes, okay? So yes. So now what I'm going to do here is, from the class list, that means from this whole list, I wanted to fetch, right? I wanted to fetch where function of x is a method, or there's a syntax that we use, okay? Where the, okay, so here I'm gonna write it in such a way that where the user that has logged in, that means the current user dot display name. So this is basically the syntax, okay? So to understand which user has logged in, okay, this is the syntax to understand which user has logged in. So if the current user dot display name dot to string dot to lower dot contains, okay, this is all VB expressions, okay? If this contains the value that's there in my teacher name, right? So how do you write that? X dot teacher name, because X is the context that I have defined over here, right? From my data. X dot teacher name, again dot to string dot to lower, because initial one I have converted, right? If this contains, then from that I wanted to select class number, right? So this basically returns an array. So I wanted to just take the first one. That's it. It's quite simple. So you don't have to worry. I will also give this syntax in the description. But to understand it more in depth, I would recommend you to go and watch link queries, because it's not only about apps, it will help you with a lot more other things. Okay. So perfect. Save. So what this will return? It will return the class number. So just close this and let's preview. Okay, wait. Before we preview, let's also, uh, wait. Okay, so in this variable, right, in this label, I will just ask to display the class number variable. So we can see the class number, okay? So as per our data here, as the logged in user is Harika, the class number should be 1. Okay, so let's preview this and see. There are actually a lot of new updates were also released on UiPath apps with respect to the templates and custom list and everything, which I'm going to shoot in the next few days. So you can stay tuned and subscribe to my channel to not miss any of the latest videos. So if you see here, 1 has been displayed. That means we have fetched the class number information. So the first part has been achieved, right? So if you see here, what is the first thing? Based on the user that has logged in, with respect to user that has logged in, we will fetch the class number. So the user that has logged in is Harika. So we have fetched the class number. So let's check one more thing. Okay. So mm, let's say here we will change this one. Okay. I have given my name here, and here I have provided Chandler. Okay. So in that case, what should happen? Based on the user that is logged in, the class number should come as 5. So let's check that one as well, how dynamically it is working. Because as I'm the only user, this is the way I can test it, right? So preview, and let's see, it should come as 5. So it is loading. And the output is 5. Perfect. So I hope this is clear for you. If not, I'll explain one more time here. So the first step we have done is we have taken both the entities. We have taken student details, which contains all the information, and the class teacher detail, which contains class and the teacher. So now our first criteria is based on the user that has logged in, we should fetch the number, right? So what is the syntax for that? Whenever you are using entity, right? Whenever you are using entity, in order to use it further, in order to apply any queries on it, we have to convert that into a enumerable or a collection. So for that purpose, what I have done, I have converted that. I have created a variable which is called as class list, right? Which is called as class list, and it is of the type list source. And I have taken the I have taken this as the class teacher entity. But how the value will be loaded in it? You have to assign it, right? You have to set the value. So for that purpose, whenever I am having in the main page, when the main page is loading itself, at that time only I have set the value of class list to the class teacher entity. I have loaded everything into the class list. And later, when you want to have a class number, that, for that also I have defined a variable, and I have provided a query which will filter my class number based on the user that has logged in, right? So perfect, simple. So now we have achieved the first step. Clear. So what is the second step now is, once after you get the class number, you should filter the data, correct? Let's go to the entity and see there. Before to that, let me change this, because for fifth class, we don't have any data. Okay, done. So for class students details. So now we have come that the first class information, first class number 1 is has been provided. So after that, we wanted to fetch the data from this table which contain class number 1, right? So now for that purpose, we should fetch the data from student details entity that has class number as 1. Perfect. So this has to be done. So how do you do that? Similar process. Same process we are going to do. First thing, we in order for that also we have to put a query and extract, right? So for that purpose, what I'm going to do? First, create a variable which is students list of type list source. Okay. And of student details entity. Similarly, what we have done for class, right? And after that, what we should do, when the main page is loading, we have to set the value of students list. Okay. Set value into student list, right? What value we should set? We have to use the query builder, and we have to take the student details. That's it. Okay. So from here, um, we can do two things actually. Let me show you. So this is done. Okay. So this part is finished. So now the student list contains all the details that are there over here. Perfect. And now what we will do is, let's take a edit grid. Okay, let's take a edit grid. And in this edit grid, you will have something called as data source, right? When you're using the data source, here you can just define student list dot data dot as enumerable dot where function of x where. So now you wanted to get the student information. You can either do this way, or I can also show you the simpler way. Let me show you that. If you don't know how to write this queries, what you can do, you can just take the student details, okay? And from here you can add a condition, okay? So if you can add a condition like where the class number is equal to, so we already defined a class number, right, in our variable. So what is the variable? Class number variable, right? So this class number variable contains the number with which the user has logged in. So let's say if class Harika is the teacher for class 1. If user is logged in with Harika, then it will give 1. So in that case, only class number 1 details will be displayed over here. Perfect. So for that purpose, we don't even need this. So let's delete it. We don't need it. Let's delete here as well. Okay, so this way I think it's more easy way. Okay, let's go to edit grid and now let's preview this. I'll explain the second part once again. So it's for class 1 and you can see only one class detail. So let's say usually how the edit grid would appear. Usually the edit grid would appear like this. So let's say if you are providing any data like student details. So I'm Harika and I'm the teacher for class 1. So I wanted to see from the business, like from the admin, okay? So administration, they want for the class 1 teacher to see only class 1 information. But ideally, if you give here, all the information has been appearing, right? So this information is not really necessary. There can be Monica or any other student with the same name in other class also. There can be chance that that can be mistakenly edited or updated or deleted, right? So for that purpose, what we can do, we can restrict it. This way we can restrict the access and also it will be confidential. So only class 1 details will be seen by the class teacher 1. Okay, so and also to revisit the concept of how you can send the specific information on edit grid, the second pointer. So we just simply gone to the edit grid and in the query builder, what we have done, we have first taken the whole data and we have applied the condition. So for condition, we need only class that belongs to 1, right? So for that purpose, we kept class number that equals to 1, which we have initially fetched. So this way we can actually restrict the access to a certain user based on the login. Okay, so I hope this information is helpful to you and you could able to achieve the user context or the data restriction within the app based on the user that logs in. So if you find this video useful, please do let me know. And also if you have any more questions around this topic, do comment it out. I'm happy to help you and assist you on that topic. And thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe. Till then, I'll see you. Bye.